Sicha we will learn today is in the Sichas Chelik Chav Gimel, the second Sicha to Chag Hashavuos. Since Yedua, as by Matan Torah, it's known that by Matan Torah something special happened. And the Rebbe explains, Choch as Eich Lifnei Matan Torah at Megillah Torah, like he's saying, what's so special? Because on first glance you would think that what's so special? After all, they learned Torah before Torah was given by Har Sinai. Okay, before it says clearly in Medrash, and Rashi brings it, that Beis Medrash shel Shem, Beis Medrash shel Eber, that Shem and Eber had the Beis HaMedrash, and Beis HaMedrash is a place where they learned Torah. And who learned there? Avraham learned there, and Yaakov learned there. So we see that there was a Beis HaMedrash even before. Und on the Big von Adam Rishon is mit Tzaveh geworden bekam mitzvahs. And starting from Adam Rishon, they were already commanded by Hashem to do certain mitzvahs. And noch mehr, even more than that, it says Ovis Kimu as Kol HaTorah Kula Achel Nitna, that the Ovis Avraham Yitzchak and Yaakov kept the whole Torah even before it was given. Basically, so they knew the Torah, they kept the mitzvahs. So what's so special about Matan Torah? So the Rebbe says it's known that by Matan Torah was Nischadesh, something new happened. That what? Aziden seine Dämmung mit Stave geworden, if alle Young mitzvahs. First of all, before there was only 7 mitzvahs, and the rest they knew and they kept, but they weren't commanded. The people were commanded to do 7 mitzvahs, but not all the 630 mitzvahs. So by Matan Torah, the Yidden were commanded by Hashem to keep all 630 mitzvahs. Not like the others did, they were not commanded, they did it on their own. Und es ist gegeben, angesagt geworden, Kol HaTorah Kula Kolechet Vechet Yisrael. And Hashem gave the whole Torah. Not only gave, He commanded the whole Torah, every part of the Torah, to every single Yid. Und neich as Torah mitzvahs sind gegeben geworden von der Neichi, Havai Lekecha, Hashem Lekecha. And another thing special that happened, that the Torah mitzvah that Hashem gave us was given by Onoichi. The first words of the Aseres HaDibros is Onoichi, and then goes Hashem Lekecha. And we know Onoichi is Hashem himself, the essence of Hashem. Because later, what it says further, Hashem, Onoichi, Hashem Lekecha, Hashem Lekecha are names of Hashem. A name is a description. So that refers to Hashem in a certain way. Hashem manifests himself in a certain way. But Onoichi is I. I means, as it says in Zohar, I refers to Hashem the way that he's Leis Rames B'Shumeis B'Shumkei, that he's not hinted in any form or shape. No name could describe it because it's not a description. It's the essence of Hashem. And when the Aseres HaDibros, which was the time of Matan Torah, they started with the word Onoichi, means that who was giving the Torah? Onoichi, the essence of Hashem. Hashem himself, not the way he manifested in certain ways, but Hashem himself as he is. In an Eifem with the Gemara sagt, and that itself is in a way that the Gemara says, Fun Onoichi, it was given the word Onoichi, the way the Gemara describes it. Onoichi is Rosh Tevis, Onoichi is Aleph Nun Chof Yud, is an abbreviation of the word Anon Nafshik Sovis Yehovis, which means I, myself. Nafshik means my nefesh, my being, wrote it and gave it. That's a simple pshat. The way Chassidus explains means Anon Nafshik Sovis Yehovis, der Eibishter hat sich hereingeschrieben und reingegeben in the Torah. I, myself, Ksovis means wrote myself in. Yehovis means gave myself over. Hashem gave himself, and what part of himself? Not the way he is connected to things, but the way he has been. In essence, I put myself in the Torah. And that's what happened by Matan Torah, which was not there before. The Baldas Torah is Nafshei from the Ebershten. And since the Torah is the Nefesh of Hashem, and Losh Nachsidis, if you interpret in the Chsidish, the Sprach, the expressions, the way it's Nachsidis, it's Rotz Natzmi. Nefesh, the word Nefesh refers, or has another meaning also. Nefesh doesn't only mean soul, self, the essence of yourself, but Nefesh also means will, want. Rayas from Sukkim, the Rebbe brings now order 8. There's a Raya from Apostle, it says, Ein Nafshei Elohim Hazeh. Hashem says, I don't want this nation, and the word want is Nefesh. So we see it's Nefesh. So Torah is the Nefesh, which means, in other words, the Rosain Atzmi, the essential will of Hashem, is movement. So from that we understand, we understand something which happens to be a fundamental idea in our religion, as a Torah that the Torah cannot be changed. Whatever the Torah is forever. The Rambam says, there's a very clear and outright written in the Torah Shehi mitzvah imedes lada le'melamim. The Torah is the commandment that stays forever, forever and ever. Ein lo shinui v'le giroim v'le teisvus. It can be a change, it can be nothing taken away, subtracted, nothing added. Another explanation of the Rambam is HaTorah azeis ein chukel mishpatei mishtanim le'elam u'le'elam. The Torah, the mitzvahs of the Torah, the laws of the Torah cannot change forever and ever. That means that's the difference between before Matan Torah and after. The tzivuyim v'erois from far Matan Torah, the commandments and the lessons that Hashem gave before Matan Torah is in Zei given Heisofes Ikriyas. There were a lot of additions, major additions like Revachul, etc. We see given by Noach Lagab Odom, as we find by Noach compared to Odom edition. Avram Lagab Noach. The Rambam brings in order 11 from the Rambam where he says, Al Sisha Dvorim Nisav Odom edition. Odom edition was only commanded 6 mitzvahs. Heisiv Noach, and Noach they gave a 7th mitzvah. Then by Avram Avin another thing was added. So we see things were changed, were added. And the reason for it is, why was it able to be added? So the Rebbe said, "V'yashleimer b'derech you could say, and maybe the Rebbe said, maybe you could say, "Bazei is ikir inyonim given to l'b'teteva v'tera sodom." The main purpose of these mitzvahs was they were commanded, but they were for the purpose, for the benefit of the person. So really, the Hashem created the world, put a person in the world, and for his benefit, he gave the mitzvahs. So the mitzvahs are basically an offspring of the person, an extension of what the person needs. Since it's so, as in the modern, therefore, if the whole thing is for the benefit of the person, if there are changes in the person, aliyas means things go up, get better, chulu, etc. means sometimes could get worse. So if the whole mitzvah is only for the benefit of the person, if the person change, so there's a change in the commandments Hashem gave to the people, because the whole thing is for the benefit of the people. Hashem by Matan Torah, but by Matan Torah was done on the Reibishter nafshik sovis. Then we say my nefesh, myself, wrote myself and put myself in the Torah. In Torah is moving. We understand that the mitzvahs of Torah is nicht nur a mittel zu Kabbalah schar. So we understand that the Torah is not just a means to get reward, or let's say or a means how people should purify themselves for the benefit of the people. Or that the Grechen the Meile Vila from Segula Mamlechas Kenyam Kodesh, or it's in order that Yidden should reach a higher level, the level that the Eibishter said before Matan Torah, you will be a chosen nation, you'll be special for me, you will be a kingdom of Canaan, you will be a holy nation. Not only for that, that's all for the benefit of the people. But we just said that by Matan Torah, the Eibishter gave the Torah mitzvahs not for any benefit of somebody. It's because that's his inner essential will. But because if it would be just for the benefit of the people in whichever level, was them on the Shaychas Zog, then you would be able to say, if there's a change in those that fulfill the mitzvahs, which means there's a change in the people that the mitzvahs were given to benefit them. If there's a change, in the mitzvahs, so there's a change in the mitzvahs themselves. But that's not by Matan Torah. Mainly also, they're mechuvim betachlis. The goal and the purpose of the mitzvahs is why? That's the nefesh of the Eibishter. That means that's the etzem of Hashem. That's the rotzen atzmi, Hashem's essential inner will. If this is like, so to speak, Hashem himself, so therefore, Hashem is in the chaychas kashinu in the nafshich hasv'sholem, just like there's not possible to change in Hashem himself, in his nefesh, as he is in the chaychas kashinu in Torah mitzvahs. There can't be a change in Torah mitzvah because that's an expression of Hashem's essence. Like I explained in other places, in order 18, the Rebbe said, look in page 182, and there it'll refer to other places too. He explained Barichas this whole Nekudah. So now we came to an understanding that there can be any changes in Torah mitzvahs from when the Torah was given, which was not the case before Matan Torah. So now the Rebbe says, is verbunden der mitzvahs is nafshi, the Yehovah's in the Shlapshin, since the eternity of Torah is connected to the fact that the nefesh, nafshi of the Eibishter, was given to the Yidden. And how was it given? Through the Eibishter's chokhmah, because Torah is chokhmotzei ritzayin shakadosh baruch hu. That's the lashon of Tanya. The chokhmah is the wisdom and the will of Hashem, and that's the Torah. So the Eibishter himself put himself into this chokhmah and ritzayin, his wisdom and his will. He's moving b'pashtus. Since that's what Torah is, we understand clearly, simply. That this that the Torah is eternal is not only in the written Torah, which means the Chumash, also in the oral Torah. which would include the Gemara and everything else. Why do we say that? Because was kol mitzvahs nitnu l'Moshe b'Sinai, because all the mitzvahs that were given to Moshe Rabbeinu by Har Sinai, which has cholas and sin Anochi, and the beginning of the whatever he gave them started with Anochi. So the Rambam says b'pirusha nitnu. When the Eibishter gave it, it wasn't just what those words he said. That included all the commentaries, all the pirushim and Torah. All of Torah Shebal Peh is included to what he gave us by Sinai. Ubechol chelkeo, and all their parts. While Mikra, because he quotes a different Chazal, by Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, Agode, because Mishnah and Gemara and Agadate, Afil Mashe Talmud was because it lehedes lifnei Rabbi, but even what the Talmud in the future will teach for his Rebbe, but he's a worthwhile Talmud, which means he comes up with a real idea. Messina was also included in Moshe Messina. And there's a lotion that says, Divrei Torah, kulum kiachas. The words of Torah is all one. And he quotes in order 26 that it says in Sifri Hazinu, it says there this lotion, but it also has the Yesh Be'em Mikra u'Mishnah Halochas v'Agodas. It has Chumash and Mishnayis and Halochas and Agodas. And B'meila, that's also included in the concept of being eternal. And in order 22, the Rebbe says, he quotes from Tanya Kuntres Achren, HaTorah Kulo Nitzchis B'Klolo B'Prota. The whole Torah is eternal in general, and the details. Shegam Prote Halochas, and he says even the details of Halochas were given by Har Sinai, and is part of Matan Torah. Now, since all that is part of Matan Torah, Kumtui, so it comes out, that everything Gemara is eternal. Everything Gemara is forever because it's part of Torah, including it would be anything in Shas. Includes when the Shas, the Gemara talks about nature of people, Refues, or talks about medicines that the Gemara tells us. And order 27, he brings from the Ragachover where he says that when it says in Gemara that there was Sefer Refues, the Gemara says in Psochim, so he says, Refues haniskorim bi Gemara ze geder chelik min HaTorah Shebal Peh. The Refues, the medicines that the Gemara says is part of Torah Shebal Peh, hamoser lona b'Kabbalah. That was given to us, the Kabbalah means in tradition. Ube'emes ze geder Sefer Refues hashmuvur Psochim. And this is what the Gemara Psochim means when it says there was a Sefer Refues. It was all given by Matan Torah, so it's part of Torah. And anything similar to the Torah Gemara, anything that Gemara talks about is part of Torah, and therefore should be essential. Since they are part of Torah and Torah Shebal Peh, and we said Torah Shebal Peh is part of Torah, which is eternal. So even these things that the Gemara talks about, the natural things and medicine, things like that, they are also included in the eternity of Torah, and as we said before, never changes. And the Rebbe here, in Ha'orah 28, brings from Lekutei Levi Yitzchok, from his father's Sefer, he writes like this, everything that's written in the written Torah and in the oral Torah, whether it's a halacha or it's a gadete, kula mamish, Omer Hashem. All this mamish that Hashem said, and that loshon, because the way they were said by the Eibishter, that's the way it's written. And in Order 29, the Rebbe writes, in Rabbeinu Bechai, in the introduction to his commentary of Torah, he says there, the kol ha-chochmes klul is b'Torah. All chochmes, all wisdom, all sciences are all included in Torah, boys from the Shochas Imenu, and they all come from it. Araya, proof to that is from the story of B'Shur B'Chananya Pcheres, where he brought the rayas from Torah about certain natural things, because anything that we know about nature and science and things like that, all comes from Torah. So certainly anything that's written in the Gemara, science, medicine, anything else, is all part of Torah. But in Order 29 star, the Rebbe says, but it seems like there are others who write differently. He says, he brings here in Order 29 star that Reb Shriri Goyen and the Rambam he made in Nevuchim and Reb Avrom ben Rambam writes, not what we said here, writes that the things of nature that's in the Gemara is not part of Torah, and it's just because they were great doctors, they were great scientists, So whatever science knew then, they were the biggest scientists, so they knew the best of all. So they knew they were the biggest doctors, but it's only what they knew then. And therefore, it's possible that it should change later on. They find out differently. So it seems the opposite of what the Rebbe says. So the Rebbe says, I spoke about it, the Fabrengen of Shavuos and Shabbos Parshanos Tov Shemem Gimel. Just to say in very, very short, you have to look it up there, but the Rebbe there explains, number one, the Meir Nevuchim we know was written. The idea is the Meir Nevuchim was written for beginners. People who are beginning to go into Yiddishkeit. And certain things you'll tell them they won't be able to accept. So you tell them what it says. A lot of things there is not really the bottom line. And this is one of those things that he writes this because for beginners, that's the way you explain it. But that's not really what the Rambam himself holds. The Ra is that the Rambam in Yad HaChazoke, in his Sefer Rambam, says clearly that the whole Torah was given Messina and cannot change. And when he says the whole Torah, he doesn't go into protein, depends which parts of Teva and parts of medicine. Is not like that. So the Rambam clearly paskins, and he says clearly he holds that everything is part of Torah. So what he wrote the Meir Nevuchim is only because for people who are not ready for that yet. And the Rebbe said you could say the same thing, but the Schapiro who said it, and the guy with the Avram and the Rambam said. It's also this is all because they were writing that this is one level that you could be at, but then to reach a higher level, then that's the truth will be the higher level when you're able to understand and grasp what the Rebbe said here in the Sikha that it's all part of Torah. And the Rebbe says also that even they themselves who write this, write that there is no Kabbalah. They write that it's all what the Chachamim thought, and there's no tradition in it. There is no tradition, so B'meila they can't be 100% sure what they're saying. So they themselves are saying it just may be. And another thing, the Rebbe says, that we find in other things, that there are certain things that was thought one way, and it was, at the time it was thought, you could accept it. But later on, when the Psak Din came differently, even when it comes to Inyonim V'Amunah, now there's no way to be different. And he gives an example. The Rambam writes that anybody who says that Hashem is a Baal Guf, Hashem has a body, is an Apikeres. When the Ravid says, what are you talking about? There were people greater than you, Rambam, who lived before you who believed that way. So the Rebbe explains, what's the pshat? There's a reason why they believe that way. There's a sword, and not to go into it, that it's possible it should be something like that. But anyway, but the Rebbe says after the Rambam Paskin, now if someone will come now and say I'm a Baal Guf, Davish is a Baal Guf, and he'll say why? Because the people before the Rambam held like that. Now we'll call him an Apikeres because now that the Rambam wrote on Paskin, anybody says even though there is a sword to explain it, same thing here. Even if we'll say that what it says in the Ge'ainim and it says in the Rambam and Rambam is really what he thought, but sof kasov when the Rambam paskins lahalocha, that's the way it stays. And b'meila, that's for sure. There's no question that the truth is this. And even the Rambam and the Rambam, what came after the Rambam wrote, the Rambam didn't write it as halacha. He's writing it in something, but as a halacha, the Rambam in his sefer, everything that the Rambam writes is halacha, as the Rebbe will explain later, is halacha. Since it's halacha, now that you can't say differently. So the bottom line is that the fact is that everything in Gemara is part of Torah. No matter what, whether it's a story, whether it's talking about the nature of people, talking about medicine, it's all part of Torah. And b'meila, whatever it says by Torah applies to that too. Torah is nitzvah, this is also nitzvah. So the Rebbe says, now that we came to this conclusion, Al Pizeda from Verstehen, so now according to this, we have to understand, was me gefind bin gehet so gamas gulas. I feel that we find that certain sgulas means things that are advice to give for certain problems that might have, and they're not medical things. They're just as good. As good means some kind of spiritual thing there, but it says in the Gemara to do that. We find it in Teresh Shabbat that Gizok, it says, but nowadays it's different than the way it was in time with the Gemara. Because the nature changed. So it says clearly that those things don't apply now. How could you say, we just finished saying at the beginning that anything that's Torah is forever, it can't change, and this we see changed. So if you wouldn't hold it's part of Torah, then you could say this is not Torah, so but that we don't say, it's clear that it's part of Torah. And as Rebbe will bring later a proof that if you learn these parts in the Gemara and in Rambam as it will bring, do you have to make a bracha before you learn it? There's a din, you can't learn Torah without a brichas Torah, make a bracha. If a person will decide to learn just the parts of the Gemara, which is the refuahs, the medicine, can he learn it without brichas Torah? It doesn't say anywhere such a thing. So if you have to make a brichas Torah with a bracha, Shem HaMalchus, it means that this is Torah. If this is Torah, how could it be that it changed? Bishleim yonim v'zeiris ram nechama v'ayir gwen is mitnei sakodem v'siyem is meile those in yonim etayra that lachatchila to begin with the Chachamim said that this applies only in a certain situation. If there's a certain danger, because of a certain danger in the place where a certain danger, you got to do it. Because an example, for instance, the din for mayim megulim, there's a din that the Chachamim said mayim megulim. If you're not allowed to leave water, plain water, in a kele, in a glass or any kele, without protecting, without looking at it. Nothing to do with it. Overnight, nothing. If you have a cup of water and you walk away for a few moments and you come back, you're not allowed to drink it. That's called mayim megulim, mayim that was uncovered, unless it's covered or someone is watching it. But mayim megulim, the Gemara made a din, there is a halacha that you're not allowed to drink mayim megulim. But was osir chachomim shemeshos enochas mehem v'hitel b'moras. And the reason that the Chacham said, because they're afraid, maybe as you walked away, a snake crawled up and left his venom in the water, which is poison, and you might die. So the Chacham said, no water that's left unguarded and uncovered, you could drink. Nevertheless, he's moving. So then the din is, as we'll say, that nowadays doesn't apply. He's moving. This is similar as if the Torah would have said clearly, is in them ort uzman that this prohibition only applies at the time and in a place where it's common to have snakes. When the fire is therefore is the din. That's what the din Shulchan Aruch is nowadays, that there is no snakes amongst us. It's allowed. Okay, it's the same thing, other things. So you could ask, you would have thought to ask the same question. If the Torah is made a din, how could it change? Because this was the chatchila, a condition in the din. So because just like everyone understands that it's no contradiction to the eternity of Torah. We find many dinim that apply only in certain times, in certain places. Like mitzvahs that's only you could do during the day, or mitzvah that you could only do in the time when we had the Beis Hamikdash, or mitzvahs that Luyas Boris Gates, mitzvahs that only apply to Eretz Yisrael. You can't say, well, if Torah is eternal forever, so every second and every place you should have it. That's not a problem. Torah itself established this mitzvahs in a specific time and place. Those is the gather mitzvah. That's the parameters of the mitzvah. For instance, use a lotion. Women are all exempt from mitzvah, mitzvah that the time causes. It's time connected to time. Because that's the way the mitzvah is. So the same thing we say, they gave a certain other isurim that the Chacham said. If they said lechatchila that it's because of the certain reason in a certain place, a certain time, then we understand. If that doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. So therefore, the mayim megulim, for instance, when they said it's osir because there are snakes, when there are no snakes, a time when there are places there's no snakes, the isur never was there. So it's like a Shabbat. The Rebbe doesn't say, but like Shabbos. On Shabbos you have to rest. Why don't you have to rest Sunday? Torah is forever. Because the din of Shabbos is only the seventh day. That's the din. The same thing in the din is like that. But these and yonim of medicine, medical things, and sgulas, which also similar to medical things that help you, that are written in the Torah. But they are Torah nicht verbunden mit Gdorim with Noim from Zman HaMokim. There the Chachamim did not say in Gemara that this is only specific times. Nor the werden gesagt bei Ifestami in the Gemara it said very clear, straightforward. These are refuahs that work. And the Gemara says the stam as man mefirtze bei from Yisuyim is the Sasakon. It says if you behave in a certain way, it's dangerous. Und die Sach, und as die Sach is nicht refuah. On the other hand, certain things will be good, will be a cure. So these things that the Torah, the Gemara did not give any conditions or any saying. It's only when people had this and this nature. So how is it possible to say that these things are not forever, not eternal, and they don't apply nowadays? B is so much so, wie state says in certain places, not only they not necessarily will help, you're not allowed to use it because the nature changed. And those refuahs helped the way the nature was in the time of the Gemara. But now times it doesn't apply. But how can we say it? If it's part of the Gemara, which is part of Torah, how could that change? And it doesn't say if it's a condition of the Gemara. If the Gemara would say that if your nature is so-and-so, and you have this and this sickness, then this refuah will help. So obviously, this has to be. If the nature is like that, the moment the nature changes, it's not a problem. But it doesn't say that. So it seems like this is a clear-cut thing. But how could that change? Und wir kamen Forschung sagen, Tage, wenn die kamen, und there's some Forschung Tage say that it's not so. It didn't change. As a Yezer research that Allah Sinai, since these prohibitions that the Gemara gave, certain things they say it's dangerous. Is halacha l'meishem Sinai that came from Moshe Rabbeinu in Sinai? Can you say it's like an Änderung that Shinaitim case? It can be changed because of the time change. Things changed. The words of Hashem stand forever. So they take a hold like that. And the Chura, they should be right. How come we don't pass them like that? We say that the way many poskim hold that you can't use these things of the Gemara. It should be like they say, that since it's written in Torah, it has to be that, and Torah is Nitzchi, this also has to be Nitzchi. How is it not? This is all a kasha on the Gemara. Al Torah say the kasha b'divrei Rambam. Same question we can ask in the words of the Rambam. In Hilchas Deis schreibt der Rambam. In Hilchas Deis the Rambam writes, ganzen Perek, a whole Perek Dalet, wie a Mensch darf sich führen in Yonah Achilu Shtiva Chulu, how a person should behave coming to things of eating and drinking. And he says, Hey, Lebayes Aguf Bori B'Sholem B'Darki Hashemu. And he says that since the body should be healthy and complete, is from the ways of Hashem. But mainly he wants to tell us, how will you keep your body complete? How will you keep your body healthy? Was von dem, was der Rambam hat das hereingestellt bei Sifri Yad HaChazokah, since the Rambam put this in his Sefer Yad HaChazokah, but it's a Sefer from Halachas, it's a Sefer of only Halachas, and the Order 37 Rebbe, like the Rambam himself writes in the big end of his introduction that this is Halacha. He's moving Adi Haro Zainen. Obviously, these lessons and these instructions that the Rambam gives us of what to eat and what not to eat, it's not like when the doctor tells you how to behave or gives you a medicine. But the Chayla darf sie folgen. You have to listen. The Torah says you have to listen to the doctor. It says a mitzvah that you have to watch your health. Okay, so you have to listen. But when the actual specific medicine he gives you is not a din Torah. There's a general din Torah. You have to listen to the doctor, but not that each specific thing is part of Torah. Torah doesn't say that. But in our case, where the Rambam puts in the things that you eat, things that you shouldn't eat, the Rambam writes it. The Rambam writes what you should do. The Torah didn't write what medicine you should take for a certain sickness. The doctor said it. The Torah just says, generally, listen to the doctor. But here it's not like that. The Rambam writes clearly, don't eat this, it's dangerous, do eat this, and the summer, winter, all kinds of things. So this is mamech, part of halachas of Torah. And the Rebbe says that even if those that hold that when the Rambam wrote this is not because he took it from the Gemara, Order 40, the Rebbe says Order 40, and even if it came from other places, not from, right, some say, the Rebbe brings that there are sources for everything that the Rambam writes is from the Gemara. Anything that he writes, how to behave, what to eat, what not to eat, they find sources in the Gemara. But even if you hold that there's not sources in the Gemara, it doesn't matter. Because if the Rambam wrote it in his Sefer Halachas, this becomes part of Torah. And the Rebbe quotes here, the Rambam in Hilchos Kiddush HaChedesh, Rambam, a lot of the prokim, their chapters are basic, real, pure astronomy. And astronomy was written also in the books of the astronomers, Goyim even. And Rambam says some things he took from there. And then at the end, he writes an interesting thing. He writes, the reason I wrote it in my Sefer, because when you want to know this, you shouldn't have to go to outside of Torah. You could take it from Torah, which means interesting. The same thing could be written in a science book, an astronomy book. It's not Torah. It's Chochmah. It's Chochmah Chetzonius. It's not Torah. If you read it in the Rambam, you learn from the Rambam. In the Rambam, it's Torah. So we see whatever the Rambam wrote, even if his source is not from Gemara, but the source is from doctors, from science. But if he put it into a Sefer, it became part of halachas. And in Order 41, the Rebbe writes, the Rambam writes in Hilchas Deis, when he gives us the instructions of what you should eat, what you shouldn't, he writes, that whoever behaves like the ways that we taught you. So it's not, and it means like this, it's not like when science or somebody tells you this and this is good, it doesn't tell you have to do it, you don't have to do it. If you want to be healthy, do it. But there's no obligation that you have to listen to what the doctor says. But you'll harm yourself. But in Torah, it's not like the Torah just says, if you do this, it's good, if you do that, it's bad. But Torah says you have to do. And the Rambam uses the same lotion on all the things that he said, that heironu, that the things that I taught you to do, but not taught you, I instructed you to do. So in other words, it's like Torah that you have to do it. You have to instruct you to do it. And in order 42, the Rebbe says, he brings from a Shaila Chuvas Haramo, that even the Gabba the Meir in the Vuchim of the Rambam, he writes, that his Svarim of the Rambam spread out to all the Chachomim, everyone made it as a crown to their head, to bring a raya, like Alocha Meshim Sinai. Even in the Sefer of the Meir and Nevuchim. In other words, we see that whatever the Rambam wrote is Torah. So the Rambam gave us instructions how to do, what to eat. Means that it's Torah. Torah that if you eat this, not if you eat this, should eat this, you should not eat this. That's like a din, it's a halacha. Befrat, it's even stronger. Especially, the Rambam is nicht mistapek mit sagen, hey, v'yesaguf body v'sholem adarke Hashem u'sharei. The Rambam doesn't just write, since the body should be healthy and complete, is ways of Hashem. Therefore, therefore, a person should stay away from things that are negative for the body, that ruin the body. And you should behave to eat or do things that are good for your body, they make healthy your body. He could have just written that paragraph, he would have finished off. And then he should have not tell us what to do. Then he should have said. And then now go research in science books, research in medical books, and you see what you could eat and what not. Al derech wie schreibt the Seif, the Rambam himself writes at the end of this Perek, he says like this, that all this is only said for a healthy person. Then you should continue using doing what he said. But as a chayla, someone who was sick already, then there's different behavior. And he adds, like it says in the medical books. It doesn't say what to. So those things which he didn't write are not Torah. But the rest of the stuff which is written regular, he writes what to do. Why didn't he just say, the mitzvah is you have to be healthy and you have to listen to doctors, and now go research what the doctors say. The fact that he wrote it, from dem was to his beprotius, since in detail he says what you should eat and how you should eat, is moving from that we understand as the protein is an halachas. This details of the Rambam says that you should eat this vegetable, not eat this, whatever it is, these are halachas. Divrei Torah, the words of Torah, azevi the andere yonim sefer hayat, like other things in the sefer which are all Torah. The eid nafkamina lemaisa, and also nafkamina, which is I mentioned before, whether it's Torah or not. So far, whether you have to listen to it or not, seems like you should have to. But it's another nafkamina whether it's Torah. B'shas ha'id learned in Hilchas Deis, when a person learns in Rambam, in Hilchas Deis, all these detailed things that the Rambam writes, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, is a Mekayim mitzvah Talmud Torah. When you're learning just those halachas, you're fulfilling the mitzvah Talmud Torah. And is mechuyev for them to zog birchas Torah. You're obligated to make a bracha birchas Torah before that. Now, same thing concerning the Rambam in the third Perek and most of the fourth Perek of Hilchas Seder Torah. There they talk about the stars and they talk about Malachim. It's also, if it's in the Rambam, before you learn it, you have to make a Birchas Torah. Those many Prokim chapters that the Rambam writes, which is astronomy, and he writes it in Hilchas Kiddush HaChedesh, which is basically from the 11th Perek. Even though the Rebbe says in order 45, Limrei Shom Ashikos Shom Perek Sof Perek Zayin. The Rambam himself writes there that some of the things he took from the science books, and nevertheless, because it's written in Hilchas Kiddush HaChedesh the Rambam, you have to make a Birchas HaTorah because it's Torah. So now that we came to the conclusion that everything that the Rambam writes is Torah, even the physical things, what you should eat for health and what you should not eat because it's dangerous for your health, is nicht verstandig, it's now not understood. The Rambam in sein Sefer Hayad wird reingestellt halachas, was eine Sheiche nur bis Mamesuyim. The rule of the Rambam is the Rambam did not put in any halachas which is only can apply to a certain period. Only those that apply all generations. That's the cloud of the Rambam. Order 46, the Rebbe brings from Lechem Mishnah that the Rambam only says dinim which are neig bisman that he doesn't say dinim only dinim which are now. He also says dinim which will be always. Even Mashiach will come, but only such halachas that apply. For instance, he gives an example would be there was a halacha When the man came down, the Eibishter gave a halacha that you cannot go collect the man on Shabbos. Give a halacha that you cannot leave man over from one day to the other. There's no place in the Rambam such halacha. Why? Because it only applied at a certain time. So anything that applies at a certain time and a time later doesn't apply, the Rambam didn't put it in. With Shavishin, the halacha Hilchas Deyas Hanal, and amongst the things that the Rambam wrote in Hilchas Deyas, what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, there are many halachas. For instance, what to eat, that don't apply nowadays, so like the poskim say that not only from the Gemara's time, even for us from the Rambam's time, you can't follow that because the nature changed. Since the inyonim that have to do with the nature of the body change from time to time, from place to place. Just like the nature changed from the time of the Gemara to the time of the Rambam. But the far bringt the Rambam, that's why we can see certain things which are written in the Gemara clearly, the Rambam doesn't bring. Why? Because it doesn't apply in his time because the nature changed. So if so, but they say the Rambam shouldn't have put it into his Sefer Hayad, which is a Sefer of halacha. So everything is halacha, but it's halacha that only applies in his time, not later. Nor zogen the heroic clause. He should have said the general instruction. A person should stay away things which are bad for the body and do things which are good for the body. And he should write that in every time, in every place, that what fits to according to the science and medicine of that time according to his body. So the Rambam should have just, but not written these things because these things don't apply nowadays. And the Rebbe said, if you want to say in a joking way, it's not a regular joke, but it's a joking way in Torah. You could say, this shows the importance and the preciousness of a Jewish body. In order to make sure that the Eden are healthy, I feel when the Tiel is blade gezählt the data, so the Yorn, even if it's what's written is only for certain generations and certain years, is the Rambam Kela the Rambam includes it together with the other halachas, because to show that even though it's only for a certain time, I want to make sure that you realize the importance of the health of a Yid. But that's on derech hatzachas. But in derech halacha, we have to find a reason how it could be that it's part of Torah, and nevertheless it changes. So for the tzechover biur, we still need to explain. Sof sof the Rambam getar bavoren. So the bottom line is that the Rambam should have told us clearly adi inyonim in darke abriyas and the blaze geschrieben geworden that all these natural things that he said what you should do because of the nature only apply as long as the nature is the way it was in his generation. And not to say stam without giving, saying according to the nature now, doesn't say that this is what you're supposed to do. So it seems that these are halachas. And if it's halacha, without telling us that this is to begin with made in a certain time and according to a certain situation, then it should be forever because its Torah doesn't change. So how is it that this is part of halacha, nevertheless it changed? Yesh Lavayas that the Rebbe, we could explain this. Ados Alderech with the Rambam Alein is Masber in Sefer HaMitzvahs, like Rambam himself explains in Sefer HaMitzvahs, the time for was reckon zwischen the mitzvahs, the mitzvahs Mashmodas Aliyumis. Why the Rambam counts in his mitzvahs? The destroying of the 7 nations. One of the mitzvahs says in Chumash, the Sechaya Kol Neshama of the 7 nations, Akana Nani Achiti Ameir Apris, you have to destroy. That's a mitzvah. That was a mitzvah given. The Rambam gave in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he has rules, Shoroshim. And there he says, any mitzvah which is not related to generations, I didn't include in the number of mitzvahs. Nevertheless, one of the numbers of the mitzvahs is that you have to destroy the 7 nations. Even though it's not a mitzvah that's forever. Mitzvahs that are not for always are not counted. This is a mitzvah not for always, only then. So why would the Rambam put it in? So the Rambam answers it himself. This is what the Rambam writes. The pshat is like this: anything that is over because you reached the goal, without saying that it's connected to a certain time. The mitzvah is given forever. But what happened is you accomplished. There's the mitzvah to kill, in our case, that's it, to kill the Zayin Umis. When you finish killing all the Zayin Umis, there's no more mitzvah. But not because there's no more mitzvah. The mitzvah has changed. The physical situation changed. It's not called a mitzvah that doesn't apply forever. Because it applies to any generation that you're able to do it. And the reason you can't do it now, not because the mitzvah stopped, because the situation stopped. The rule of the thing is like this. You have to think about, contemplate, and think about the difference between mitzvah, between the commandment and the object the command was about. Because there are some commandments that really applies always. The object that was connected to, that was about, is not around anymore. So then you can't, that's counted in the mitzvah. The mitzvah is still to kill Knanim. The fact that there are no more Knanim left, let's say, to kill her, that's not the mitzvah. That he does count. So we should have explained this also in our case. This is the nature of people nowadays changed. When the far help me the force, that's why the medicine of Shas doesn't work, doesn't help. Many things in the way to be healthy that the Rambam writes. It doesn't contradict the fact that it's a lesson forever. The lesson is forever. The thing that's about changed. It's not the same body as it was at the time when the commandment was given. In other words, what happened here is the mitzvah didn't change. These things are healthy, and these things you have to do. And it was connected because the teva of the person is so and so. If the teva of the person changed, the mitzvah is still there. The mitzvah is still there. The din is still there. That when the teva is like this, you got to do it. So it's similar to what we said before, that if the thing is there, but the mitzvah has changed, that's called a mitzvah. That's for days. Al derech with the Rambam gufa bavon. The Rambam himself says similar to this. When the Rambam says, I guarantee, as a manik that somebody who behaves the way I said, will not get ever sick. That's what the Rambam says. The Rambam himself says, is not guilty by doesn't apply to a person who was born sick, or other conditions, doesn't apply. So himself says that it doesn't apply to a certain case. So the same thing here also. If a person is a different teva, doesn't mean the din doesn't apply. The din applies. The teva changed. But the Rebbe says that but this, even if you explain it this way, it's not smooth, because by when it talks about killing the 7 nations or by destroying Amalek, so the Rambam says the reason it's called a mitzvah that lasts forever, even though we can't do it now, is because the mitzvah still stays, but Amalek isn't around. So the Rambam zok teir in them sivim afaret them dovesh and stabalo zayin Amalek. There the Torah tells us as part of the mitzvah. Dos is a chelik from the tzibur. That's part of the commandment. It says kill Amalek. So we could understand that in that says that when there is no Amalek, you don't kill him. And it's not a contradiction to the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is whenever there is Amalek. In theory, if Amalek comes back or whatever it is, you still have to do it. The mitzvah is still there. In our case, in Loshen Hashas Rambam, you talk it noyim. In the Rambam and Gemara, it doesn't mention any condition to noya hateve shalom, that it depends on the conditions of the nature of the person, or shamona rafua, or the conditions of the way the nature of the medicine is at now time. Doesn't say that word there. So it comes out that this should be something that should be forever. And how could it be that this is part of Torah and it's not forever? The Shleimer the Beer, but the Rebbe says I could explain the pshat like this. For Bahagdim, Aninyan Kloli ben the gates of Torah mitzvahs. First, explaining something general when it comes to Torah mitzvahs. So you do the klal b'chazal. We know the klal. The Chazal tell us that the Torah actually is talking about the way things are above in the higher spiritual worlds. It hints to down here. And the Shalah is meirich in them. And the Shalah goes into at length, which means like this. The means like this. See, some people think, people who believe that there is spirituality and higher levels in what the Torah means, but they think like this. The things written in Torah, that essentially the main thing is the way it's in Gashmis. And there's a hint, it also hints to things Lamaila. So the main part of Torah is down here. There's a hint in every word of Torah to higher things. Hakosov, that's the Loshen that he quotes from the Ramban. Hakosav yage b'tachteinu v'yirmish b'olyenim. That the Torah talks about down here, and there's a remes to higher worlds. No, verkehrt. It's the opposite. Torah red be'etzem b'olyenim. The Shalos says, Torah be'emes, whatever the word of Torah is, talking about higher worlds. V'dinyonim zayne beruchnis, the way dinyonim are above. Und is thereby nor merames if dinyonim is zayne b'tachteinu megashmis. And it's a hint to the way it's in Gashmis. Now, if someone would stop right here, would say, wow, we know that the main thing, no one could say Torah is not Gashmis, the main Torah is in Ruchnius. So when it says put on tefillin, doesn't mean to put on tefillin, it means spiritual things. So the Rebbe explains, there's haste. It means like this. Avada is aim creates with the pshut. For sure, the posting doesn't go out of the simple pshat. The posting main blaze with the rinyan beruchnis. You cannot say whatever the posting says only means beruchnis. It says alam al do the pshat from mikra. There's always the pshat away some posting. The way we touch it, it's there. But be'etzem Torah talking belyanim, and the Torah brought it down, and there is the pshat b'tachtenim, and that's what we have to do. We'll see that in a second. Al derech gay mitzvah, same thing as mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are b'tachtenim. Ma'aseh mitzvah kipshute. The mitzvah is the way it's down here. Posha, the way you have to take a piece of leather, a tefillin, and do it. Take wool and make tzitz, etc. Belyanim the teichen ruchni from the mitzvah. But you also have the teichen ruchni. You have the spiritual thing. The Pirish Bezayis means like this. Says nicht as in Zug up to the mitzvah means me kein bepashtes. Hod the mitzvah chatech ruch. Not the pshat that in addition to when you do the mitzvah physically, there is also a spiritual content in it. The contrary. When Torah redt wegen mitzvahs is be'etzem gemeint the mitzvahs seine beljene beruchnis. When the Torah talks about mitzvahs, mainly it means the mitzvahs that we have beruchnis. When the mitzvahs we see say me kein begashmis eine hemshach with itzof and yon beruchnis. The gashmis the mitzvah is a continuation of the way the Torah is essentially in ruchnis. The Mafurish Maimer Chazal, it says, Chazal tells us that in Shmeis Rabbi in order 59 it says in Yerushalmi, and the posting Magid Vorab Yankiv, Hashem tells the Yidden his words, says Hakadosh Baruch Hu Hashavuos Yisrael Asas Lishmer. What he does, he tells the Yidden to do. That means it starts off what he does. Now he doesn't put on physical film. He does all the mitzvahs. They're all up there, but it's not physical. And that he tells us to do in a physical way. Says Kastira need to klal as a ma'ase. There's no contradiction to the rule that the main thing is the actual physical ma'ase. Well, that's when they get mitzvahs. Well, that's when they get to Torah. The klal as Torah Leib Shemayim. Also concerning Torah, the rule that Torah is not in heaven. So we say Torah is not in heaven. So l'chura, it seems that it's the main thing is down here, not in heaven. So Pshat is not like that. The rotzna elyon is the Eibishter wants. As iker kima mitzvahs dafkedol amatu kipshuta. The Eibishter said, what I want is the main thing of it is l'mayla. But what I want, and I gave you at tzibur, that you must do it the way it is begashmias. Well, there is a psak halacha from Torah dafkedol amatu. Also in Torah, not only mitzvahs. The main thing is down here. Leib Shemayim, Torah is not there. So that's the way the Eibishter wants us to do, and what to pasken. But when you look at Torah itself, and mitzvah itself is other than the contrary. The source and the beginning of Torah is the way it's up there in spirituality. Like it says, Posik in Mishlei, Ve'ei Etzlei, Gemer Ashashuyim. The Torah says, that's what the Posik says. I was the toy of Hashem. I was the pleasure of Hashem. So the Torah originally, before it came down, was the pleasure of Hashem. The Chazal say, Chamuda Genuza Shegenuza Loch. When the Malachim said, give us the Torah, they said, you have this precious thing that's hidden by you. Give it to us. So what was the Torah before it was given? Precious by Hashem. So it's all Beruchni starts up. Other places we see that. And from the Nuchnius it came down to Gashmis. Like it says in Yisrael Beschanan, I spoke to you from heaven. I took it from heaven and brought it down. Another posting, Hashem said, I made my voice heard from Shemayim, and then it came down to the Oretz. Then the Torah from Shemayim, from the Ruchnius, came down here, and in the Gashmis, the way, like it says in 68, the Tanya Perik Dalet says, the Torah came down from its honorable place, which is the will and wisdom of Hashem. Umisham Nosa, from there it traveled. Achin Mislapshem, but the word Gashmi, clear it came down to Gashma's biggest things. Und der Riber, therefore, alle in Yonim stehen in Torah is a Robteich be'etzem is seine beruchnis. Therefore, everything in Torah has the main explanation, interpretation is the way it's Lamata. That's the main Torah. And then it came down Lamata. And we have to do it the way it's Lamata. This will explain concerning what we're dealing here with the refuahs, with the medicines, etc., etc. When Torah read wegen Hiros beyond the refuahs as gulas, when the Torah talks about, gives us instructions about medicine and gulas, is he medaberes betzem bilyanim. It's talking about spiritual things. Das heißt betzem und zum allermeisten werden sie gemeint wie seine Beruchnis. First of all, first and foremost, it's the way the Beruchnis. When there's the noch, the atitzof, and etzem, and then as a result, an outcome, and a hamshocha from the way it's Beruchnis, then as a nishtalshus and coming up on the mati and gashmis, that's when they come down, nishtalshus, they come down in gashmis, like we said before, there's a hint, so to speak. The down here is a hint. It comes down here, but it does come down. Seine Beruchnis, seine sind nitzchim. The question was, how could these things not be nitzchi? Because now that we said the main thing of Torah is the ruchnis, the nitzchi, they're eternal. The spiritual root they have always, the refuah is there in the ruchnisdike way. And order 70, the Rebbe brings from Tanya in Kuntra Sachren. He says the Torah is kula nitzchis. He brings the lashon, all the details. The yesh lekulam sheirish l'mayla, and they all have a sheirish l'mayla. So even if it didn't come down the matter, it's true. It still exists. It still continues. Over pashtas, and he said, I'll tell you in simple terms. The nyoni aguf, those physical things by the body, which is achilosei, the eating and the medicine, etc. Vel nishtarshel, werden nishtalshel von dieselben nyoni wie sie seien bei ihm bedarfshe. They come down from the same things the way are there in a spiritual way, even by a person. He's been a geya der achilu brias ruchnis von nefesh, concerning the eating and health of the ruchnis of the person's nefesh. So these things still exist now. That when you want to utilize these things in a ruchnistic sense, like the ruchnis of the person, you still could use it. In welchen Sinn ist not there was no change. But the fact that it has to come down in Gashmi, there could be a difference. In Azman, in their times, originally the way the normal things happened, from the themselves taking the so down here they have the same thing as a Milo. The male help from the refuahs is gulas. So these medicine and these gulas help even the Gashmis. When there's a change and the level of the world, we know there's always Yeridis constantly gets lower and lower and lower. Then we'll kennen the Yonim Ruchni nicht herabkommen lamate mit der ganzen Schlimmes. Then the Ruchnis the Yonim cannot come down completely in Gashmis the way they are in Ruchnis. There's a change, therefore becomes also in what kind of effect it has the body. And the Eroes Hanal bleiben the Ruchnis, the physical. We're in a lower madrege, so we're not kalim, so to speak. We're not vessel to receive these in yonim ruchnim to gashmis. So in the ruchnis sense, they still are there, but not in the gashmis sense. And the order 72, the Rebbe brings from the Ramembe Pano, where he teaches the posuk where it says, "Orim deilus ubetzuras v'shamayim." You're going to come to Yisrael and you will see big cities ubetzuras, and they go up all the way to the Shamayim. And the Gemara says, "Dibra teire b'loshen havoyi." It's an exaggeration. They go all the way to the sky. So the Gemara says, "Loshen avoy." It's an exaggerated loshen, but it doesn't mean simply. So the Ramembi Panis says, yes, it is. Bitzures b'amorim, that they go all the way up to the heaven. Iruchnias, that's what it means, and it goes on the ayin sorim, whatever, etc., etc. He even brings that the Rosh Tevis, the word havoy, hey, veis, aleph, yud, is a Rosh Tevis abbreviation of the words hine, borcho, es havayim. So it's all connected, and it means kipshute, but not kipshute begashmi. So we have words that look like gashmis, but there's ruchnis, and that stays. The Ashleimer Dugmal, he says, it gives a simple example. We find by certain mitzvahs, which are a refuah, not a refuah physical, but let's say nafshis they get a refuah. It means if someone doesn't have Veda, he's sick, beruchnius, and you have to do tshuva, you have to do all kinds of things to cure it. So we find like this. In the time, but there be some Yiddush, and they brought korbanos. Is durchbringen a korban begashmi, so that gat a kapora. So when you brought the korban, the physical korban, that gave you a forgiveness kapora. And that helped him to tshuva, and he got cured. It was a cure for the zavera. Based in the Steine geworden betevu matzev, and when the nature changed, the situation changed. And because of our sins, we were chased out from our land. And the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. In them matzav helping the refuah now. So that physical refuah bringing a korban doesn't help. Hakrovas korban won't help. V'adar aber metoni bringing a korban, not only it won't help, you're not allowed to. Aber mit bekum the refuah v'kapora durch hakrovas korban beruchnis. You use the korban beruchnis, which is daven, tefillah, and shuva. So here we see an example of a physical thing, and it accomplishes a refuah, and in ruchnis it's still way, but in the ruchnis way. So b'meila, all these refuahs of the Gemara is the same way. The same thing is when they gave the Rambam with all the instructions of what you could eat and what you shouldn't, what's healthy, what's not. Why? Says you do what the Tumim Shrike wegen Meloshna Beis Yosef Ramo. You know what the Tumim writes concerning what the Beis Yosef writes or the Ramo writes. He says, "As Hakel Biksav Yad Hashem Hiskil." Everything was written, came from Hashem. Ruach Hashem Neisa B'kirbim. The Ruach, the spirit of Hashem, was inside the Ramo and the Beis Yosef. Lias L'Sheina Mechuven LaHalocha B'li Kavonas HaKesef. That they, whatever they wrote is Mamish LaHalocha without even realizing it himself. The Chayfetz Hashem B'Yodam Matzliach, and Hashem made that they should be Matzliach. This is right when the Gei the Beis Yosef and the Ramo. From them is moving as when the Rambam had geschrieben die halachas. That when the Rambam wrote these halachas, which halachas? Hanogas was versichern and the goof is lying body was shown the halachas, the instructions that tell us what will make the person healthy. Is Ruach Hashem Neisa B'Kirbim Chavan Zayin LaHalocha. It's Hashem's spirit in him. That this is the halacha. Keilah to Nitzchas HaTeirah. Hashem made him do it, and it connects to the eternity of Torah. The Hainu means like this: as afile b'shas es kumt as man, but nicht alle von seinen ungesogten Hanoges in Yon Achille wirken in dem Guf HaGashmi. As the Guf HaGashmi sein Bode v'Shalom. Even if it will come a time, but not everything that he said will work on the physical body, that it should be healthy. And the reason would be Val Teva Guf is nishtarne geworden zu Rematzah Be'elim Kanal, because the nature changed, and the nature changed because the world changed. Doch seine the heroes are nitzchim. Still, these lessons, these instructions are forever. They do accomplish through eating, doing the eating and drinking in ruchnius, but never showed by the person. When the teich ruchni is their betzem, the ruchnis dike meaning, that's the essence. Their emes from the meaning, that's the real truth. Read the Rambam ben Brias Gashmis. Even though simply the Rambam is talking about his physical health, but there is spiritual health in there, and that stays. Now, I just want to make sure that people don't make a mistake. So if so, maybe tefillin is also. That it changed. Used to be tefillin is begashmias, but now we're low. Maybe now tefillin is only ruchnias. But there it can change. Because the Torah said that you always have to put on tefillin begashmias. So it says you got to do it always. Here it doesn't say you're going to do it always. By there it says you got to do it always. When Shenkin ben Negei comes to these things, it doesn't say you have to do it always. It doesn't say that. But the question is, but still it doesn't say that it depends on the teva. So beruchnis it depends. But when it comes to a mitzvah is a separate thing. When there's a mitzvah that the Gashmi is the Eibishter wanted that the Gashmi should be done, that's it. The Rinyan Anal Sifei as Haterim with the Beres Betz Belyanim. This that we said before. The Torah essentially talks about things above in ruchnis, and then it also comes down to Gashmis. It's also negay important for the way a person learns Torah. There's a lower level of Torah when you learn Nigla. Nigla is learn portion the Gashmis is the part of Torah. When she's Fran, then there's another level. You can learn the Torah the way it's in the spiritual level, which is the inner secrets of the Torah. But says and that's what in the Neshamas, when they say they learn Torah in Gan Eden, that's the main thing they learn. And the limit from Timis and Yon Malachas Benigla. So I could say that we learn the Pnimius dike meaning of the Nigla dike halachas. Pnimius hamitzvah taimeim anistorim, the inner part of the mitzvah and the reasons and of the hidden reasons. When handy idea of a limit Seder Shtalshalis, or when we learn about the Eibishter and the whole Seder Shtalshalis, we learn all about the Achdas Hashem. Sagt man of them, as Choch Psak Halacha lernt man ob Datke von den Yonim is werden gelernt benigel der Teire durch an Shom of the Guf Lamato, that the Halacha benigel Posha, you have to take it only if you can't pass in the din, because in Ruchnis Yonim things are like that. Is a Teire we have to shouldn't forget Teire mit Aberes Be'etzem Belyenim. The essential Torah is talking a higher thing. Etzem Torah is v'yayid do lamata learned as betnimis. The etzem of the Torah is when you learn the betnimis. Und das peilt euch an V'chayis in the Torah wie sie in der Metzes beschnitten tachtein dem limit nigla Torah. You should realize that the main thing is you have to learn pnimis of Torah. The Maisa you have to do the mitzvah Gashmis. The Maisa you have to pass in the way it's a nigla. But you always have to learn pnimis also. And not only that, if you learn the pnimis, it'll also give a light, a shine, and a chayas, a life in the Torah, the way you learn it down here in Nigla. Biskip Shuta, das helps him. Das helps him. The Gash Posha, that helps a person. You have a Munah Pshuta that you know all the things are true and bruchnius. So that's first of all. But if you learn Pnimis HaTeira, what it does is, it helps you to head and feel in sein Leben von Nigla Teira, wie sie wird gelernt, Olamato, that makes you feel. That head means you really feel it. And feel that the Teira in Nigla that you learn down here, which is what we said before, because the Torah got dressed into physical things and things of this world. We start feeling that this is a Eibish's Chochmah. When you learn just about the cow, you could forget that there is really Ruchnis Dik Chochmah of Hashem. You're dealing with your own Chochmah. You could forget. It's Chochmah of Hashem no matter what. But if you learn Pnimis, that reminds you that inyan. When we add in both categories, is Mezecha to the Megillah from the Rosh Shel Mashiach, Mezecha to the revelation of the Torah of Mashiach, was Demel vet Zayin be'ifn as le'i Isaac Torah mitzvah vader berurin. Then we'll only learn to be mevader berurin, to do the elevation of things. We won't learn to be mevader. Now we learn to mevader berurin because we have clipping, we have to separate, and we have to elevate things. Then we'll only learn ki'im liyachad yichudim l'yayin yeser. In the positive things, we'll even go higher. The hakala de pnimis hatera and everything through pnimis hatera. The kayim hamitzvah kavanas solyenis, and we'll do the mitzvahs with great kavanas, the holy kavan. And therefore, not only the mitzvah, but the learning will also be learning the reason of Torah. And the Rebbe brings here in order 79. He quotes from the Geras HaKodesh. This is a lotion that comes from the Geras HaKodesh. That we will then have if we learn it, so then we'll have the yonim, when Mashiach will come in a higher way. But Lashon Rambam, like the Rambam says in sein Sefer, Velchis halachas, Rambam, which is halachas, physical halachas. So there he speaks like about wegen limud HaTorah b'Yis HaMashiach. The Rebbe just said that if you learn Pnimis HaTorah, you will reach a level of time of Mashiach. Yes, we will reach the level. The Rambam says it himself in halachas. The Chachamim Nevi'im longed for the time of Mashiach. They should they should be free to sit and learn Torah and Chochmah. And what will happen? The whole world will be involved, occupied, only to know Hashem. That means they learn. And then the Rambam adds, the Eden will be great Chachamim. They will know the hidden things. That means they will know Mashiach, the hidden things. And the Rabbi in order 85 says, Rashi and Shir Hashirim on the Pasuk, Rasha says, Nosem lemet Teirose, Hashem gave us his Torah. The Dibrim upon him spoke to us face to face. And we're guaranteed from Hashem. He'll come again, reveal himself again. Levayer lehem seitaimer, to explain the secrets of these reasons of Torah. And the hidden things of the hidden Svar. And we will meet him, so to speak. And maybe they will kiss us from kisses of his mouth, that we will learn Pnimis HaTorah. And the Rambam says that we will know the Dvarim as to hidden things. We will grasp the das of the Creator as a person could.